Out of the things I've been talking about, pointing out to you my guarantee of using the continual look-around method every time you go into a new area, and then to understand a new area, like the little task I gave you of actually going from room to room, place to place, and then new areas in here, in conjunction with not staring. And I gave you a guarantee that that would shift in such a way that your actual genes would begin to feel it. I'm now going to give another little piece you might call another link pin tonight, that if you were to put this with the rest of it that I've just given thus far, you would be in a very precarious position. This one I have never described in this way to anybody, but this hits right at the point that many of you believe are the serious questions, that many of you would think, after hearing many of the comments, descriptions, and directions I've given, that this is where you weaken, or this is where you can't seem to turn the info into behavior, and etc. And now I'm going to explain it to you. And just like Tuesday night, I'm going to put it in such a way that you may hear it immediately, and the temptation is going to be, because life has got everybody wired up this way, is to go, oh, all right, yeah, okay, what's next? And in a sense, there ain't no next. Here it comes. Nah, I always got to give a little preface, don't I? We'll ease up just a little. All right, way beyond this kind of activity, whatever the hell this is. Out in life, people believe that they have the same problem that I'm about to enunciate for you. But then they get involved with something like this, let us say, and they really believe it. Because then they begin to believe, correctly so, to start with, that they're beginning to see in a new way. They're beginning to see in the cracks, they're beginning to see in the areas, they're beginning to see time as being a continual backdrop. They're beginning to actually be conscious in a way that they never have been. I mean, forget anything spooky and metaphysical and all that hocus pocus, but that you just begin to look around and you begin to see things going on. You realize that I am now looking in a way that no one else looks. I am now looking at life being a kind of operation going on, a kind of construction project going on, and everybody else is taking all this minor stuff real seriously about dirt falling on their new boots and whether they get paid overtime, and everybody's fighting. But then, for a long time, and many people never get past this point, they feel a kind of creeping impotence, that I can see more. There's no doubt about it. I can see more than other people do, and I see things that's beyond debate. It's not my theory anymore, that you simply see that things operate in a way that I can see, that those around me do not look at it this way. And they say it's inexplicable, or they say that behavior is contradictory, they say that life is going downhill, and I see that none of that's true. But I realize that they do not, and then you begin to realize they cannot, they just are not. Things are not arranged that way. They're not going to see it this way. But then this creeping feeling of impotence I was going to describe for you is simply this, that then you have this feeling about, all right, if I'm getting so smart, how come I can't handle many of these everyday situations any better than I do? E.g., I begin to have a new insight, a different perception of the relationship between families, members, blood kin. And some of the things you've said and some of the observations I've made, I have, from afar, a different feel toward my family. And yet 4 or 5 times a year I go home and I step in that door, and figuratively speaking, it's as though my mother, let us say, has leaped on me and grabbed me, and I'm back in my little sailor suit, and I might as well be 7 years old, and it's, yes, Ma, and, everything she says, I feel like I'm stabbing myself, I'm beating myself with a whip, and I can't do anything about it, and I leave, and it's like I can explain it all away why it shouldn't have been that way. That's the preface. I'm going to tell you that which life will not tell you through any ordinary means. And we'll tell you that which large numbers of people could not be allowed to do. I am going to tell you, once you have some new information, any new information, which will assume, but not even you newest people do, that you've got some. I haven't thrown you out, and you have held on here these number of weeks now. You and the older people. I've never described it in this way to anybody, but now I'm going to describe to you very simply, and a lot of you are going to hear it immediately, but don't look past it. Don't go, oh yeah, I just never thought about it that way. Now what? Here it is. The real revolutionist always has his own agenda. He always has his own private dance card. For you younger people, everybody, you know what a dance card is, don't you? A real revolutionist has got his own dance card. Now what this amounts to is this: life is wired up in such a way, and increasingly so, I might point out, the more you move into areas where the yellow circuits, where the upper circuits are the prevalent force, that is, our part of the world, and parts like us. The more sophisticated, the more educated, the more civilized in comparison to those that would be running more by the lower circuits. It's true everywhere, but I was going to say it's even more so, that's increasingly true here, for instance. And that's this, that things are wired up to where everyone has the immediate, almost uncontrollable inclination to dance whenever asked. Now, ordinary people are always going to dance for their mother and father. But do you understand? I've already given you some tasks. That was not the purpose. But some of you, with the task out there in the shopping malls and the fake poles, but you should know by now, all you got to do, you could have a little microphone with a wire right in your pocket or in the cigar box, and walk up and say, hey, I'm a radio station such and such, can I ask you questions? And people suddenly stop and go, you say, no, I'm on the radio, and they still want to pose. You stop anybody nowadays, you stop strangers, and you ask them to dance, and almost everybody has the almost uncontrollable inclination to dance. Just stop somebody walking by in a hurry and say, hey, wait a minute. Hey, sir, would you wait a minute? People go, yeah, what? You say, do I look sick to you? You can do almost anything. Or I'll turn on the news and I'll hear that the Public Service Commission, regulating the telephone company here in this state, is having these great open meetings and people complaining about receiving unwanted calls and whether something could be done. Think about that a second. That they're mad because they get unwanted calls. They're not all that mad. Almost things are wired up to where there's the almost uncontrollable inclination to dance whenever asked. All the way from a stranger saying, pardon me, I'm taking a survey here in the grocery store. Could I ask you about your taste in bread? Think about it. You shouldn't have to think much. You'll almost just stop. And don't call it that you have certain genteel manners or you hate to be rude or you had a little free time or you just... It's just almost. Or the phone rings, you pick it up and somebody says, hello, who is this? And you have the almost uncontrollable desire to say, well, this is Fred Jones. They say, well, Mr. Jones, I am selling futures and peanut butter. Would you like to make a killing? And suddenly you're dancing. An unwanted phone call, as they call it, except they say, who is it? And you'll tell them. We're getting closer. I'm sneaking up on it for you. It is also wired up, getting away from strangers now into what would seem to be your personal interrelationships, where you've got the problems with family and loved ones, sex partners, employees, friends, the problems that are unique to man. It is also wired up in such a way that people believe, and here again we're at a place that I actually Someday should make up a new word if it wasn't so late, because believe's not it. It's got nothing to do with belief. I can say people feel, and they don't feel this way. It's got nothing to do with their feeling. Things are wired up in such a way. And since there is no word for this in the 3D world, I'll just go ahead and say to believe. But I just want you to understand it's not belief. It's not something you've acquired. It's not something you're taught. It's not something you have faith in. It's something you do like breathe. So you're wired up to breathe or to believe that a dance can't change if the other partner won't change. Think about it a second. I got a second. Think about it. All right, all of you that think you thought about it and you didn't see the point, here's the damn point. You'll tell me, you will now, and sometimes past, you might have told your psychiatrist, your rabbi, your minister, yourself, even worse, that, hey, I'm tired of arguing with my mother. I'd go see her more often, as a matter of fact. But she won't get off me. She's talking about the same thing. She's still mad because I dropped out of college. She's still mad because I married that artist. She's still mad because I won't do so-and-so. I have tried my best. I've told her, Mom, I'll show up more often if you wouldn't pick on me. Or, you know, I'm 40 years old. Don't ask me when I'm going to shave off my beard, or don't ask me when I'm going to quit living with that damn bum. But will she listen to me? Will she change? No. And so now, I was going to turn it back on me. You do it to yourself. You in the partnership, you talk about it this way. But now, even you newer people here and in other cities, you'll send me notes, letters, and say, I've thought about it, and I've been watching the tapes here in New York or wherever, or you people here, and I believe I've really begun to get something out of such and such about the genetic and essential basis between people and how all communication is literally, on the literal level, and blah, 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 and then you'll get to a problem. That I have tried to do this, and in fact I've tried not to write you about it because I believe that it's probably silly and I should be able to see through it, but this one thing just keeps hanging me up, and no matter what I do, the other person won't do right. The real revolutionist has got his own goddamn dance card. He has his own agenda. And that was the opening line tonight. Let's take another side trip. Do you know why, once you realize I've told you the truth, why people like to be pushed around? You know, part of the reason why people want to join a religion, why people want to join a political party, why people want to dance backwards, why they want to be led in general, if not some specific occasion. Remember, somebody leading a dance, somebody being dominant in one relationship, can turn right around and be submissive in another one. And the big submissive one, of course, I point out, everybody submits to their idea of some higher force. Everybody wants to dance backwards to the big guy, even atheists. They hope the universe is the big guy, that decency, or maybe there's an atheist God somewhere. At any rate, all of that, and including, how can people join up and be lifers in the army, the armed forces, and always bitch about it? Of course, now they don't bitch as much, and enrollments are down because they've eased up, for you people who don't know it. So why is it people love to be professional criminals? Not criminals, convicts. Instead of the people in the city worrying about the recidivism of returns of people to prison, they're people who are professional convicts. Prisoners. All right, I'm going to tell you why. So what I'm fixing to tell you anyway is they want the illusion to feel that there is a dance card. That I'm only doing this because my religion tells me so. I don't understand it, but by God, I try to be a good blank, Presbyterian, Catholic. I try to be a good Muslim. I try and be the best prisoner I can. Because if you don't come in and put your soap down at that one place where they tell you to when they have a shower every week, they'll hit you in the kidneys with a big old rock. So I'm all in favor of it. Everybody else, we all march in, we put our soap down here and we go do that. So what I'm about to tell you has, as always, its weak reflection out in the city with ordinary people. But only a few people can operate on the basis I'm fixing to make a little more plain. That is, the personal agenda, the private dance card. So here it is. The people that do whatever the hell this is, the real revolutionists, as I've been calling them, less and less you might notice, until I come up with a new one, operate on this basis. That you go ahead and you dance by your agenda, by your dance card, regardless of what else is going on. And that's it. There is no story about the other partner. There is no story, and I don't mean rationale in that sense, in some psychological attempted explanation. I'm talking about in reality there is no additional story. There is no other steps going on in the dance once the revolutionists decide this is the way I'm going to dance. And whatever the particular dance is, the revolutionist and his or her mother, let us say that situation, then I'm going to start dancing a certain way. And it gets very close, even though I tell you that there's actually no periods in the 3D world. There's the appearance of periods if you know what you're doing. And this is getting close to one of them. That the dance, henceforth, on my part, will be this way. Almost, period. And that is the end of it. There is no taking into account, there is no explanation, there is no discussion, and there's certainly no whining, and there's no puzzlement, and there is nothing lacking in this particular new triad on the basis that the other person won't cooperate. I want to stop the situation as it's been. I want to stop that present triad, let us say the conflict between my mother and myself. It's mostly her fault probably, but you know, I guess I got to take some of the blame. But the thing is, I want to stop this. And she won't stop. The real revolutionist has his own dance card. And when he decides that something is going to stop, when the step is going to change, it changes, and very close, as I said, it changes and it's close to period. I said it was going to be too simple. Evidently it's too complicated, isn't it? You decide, all right, I'll quit saying dance. I'll go back to my example. You decide what it is, the way in which you're going to treat, act, speak to, behave, tolerate, look, respond to your mother when you go to see her. You decide how you're going to do it. And that is it. And nothing that she can do is going to change it. She can begin to, for the first time in her life, try to do ballet steps. She can do a polka. She can throw down an oatmeal cookie and try to do a Mexican hat dance around it. She can whine, she can holler, she can begin to sing while she dances. She can begin to look at you like, why aren't you dancing? She can do anything she wants to. The house can begin to breathe in and out. Blood can pour out of the woodwork. Once you decide what the dance is, you do it, and that's it. There is one small difficulty with this, of course. It does away with the problem. So that's why I say it can be precarious. But it leaves absolutely no room, and this is not theoretical, it just leaves no room for any discussion. Once you understand this, once you understand that no dance partner that you have in life is going to change. They're not. Your mother's not going to change, your father, your sexual partner, your children, your brother, the guy at the office, anybody. They're not going to change. I don't care how smart you get. Well, right quick, I should give you an aside. That is not literally the end of it, of the possibilities, to say that it's not true that you can understand enough that people won't change. It's what some of you, I guess, would call a certain kind of manipulation that is not negative, that you can. Once you understand the way people are working in a certain fashion, you could sort of nudge people. I suggest to you most strongly that once you understand how to do that, it's not worth the effort. That may sound like a flip wrap-up of it, but I'm serious. It's not worth the effort, or I'll give you one more possible explanation verbally. Once you see how to do it, it's just not really the thing to do. Because you can apparently get somebody off your foot. You can apparently get somebody to sort of leave you alone that you thought was trespassing on you. But it's outside the normal flow of life, and it's not moralistic. I'm going to tell you, it's almost not the thing to do. That's why I say it's not really worthwhile or worth the effort. That was not a good explanation to put on you from the outset. It still wraps it up once you understand it. It's just not the thing to do, really. Because you find out that you've done something to them that they didn't bargain for in life. They didn't bargain for it with you. And it's sort of like taking advantage of a pet. Now, I don't mean that in some pseudo-superior manner to other people. But you're dealing with somebody that's doing their dance. They're not involved with this. They're doing their dance through life. And it's almost like they saw a flying saucer. Except they don't know what they saw. They didn't count on this. Plus, if you get to the point you understand that much, you also understand what I'm talking about tonight, that you don't really have to go around trying to manipulate people, if you can. And I'm not saying that that's unlimited, but assuming, as I'm sure that everybody starts out wanting to believe and then guessing that, well, if I understood the mechanics that makes life work, I could kind of put my finger in places where people weren't doing what I wanted them to do, and I could make them behave a little differently. Let's assume that there is some validity to that. I'm just telling you, it's not really the thing to do. It's not really worth it. It's not really the proper way to do it. This is more in line with how you would end up behaving. It's not trying to play with some sort of apparent magic and fooling with people and making them do that which they don't want to. Making them hear voices and see flying saucers and get more than they bargained for in life. The other way to do it is you don't fool with them. They go ahead and they dance the dance that they've got to. They've got to play out the part they played out. But once you understand that you can, quite simply, once you know how to do it, operate by your own agenda, period, then what difference does it make? That's right, you guessed it. None. You just adamantly, without saying so, by your own behavior, by your own agenda, you refuse to cooperate. You refuse to play. You refuse to dance. You refuse to listen. You refuse to see. You refuse to stare where they point. And of course, they're always pointing at your feet. You know, come on, let's dance. Come on. You still don't have a job. You still got that beard. You still living with that girl. Still living with that guy. You still don't want to move up here closer so we live down the street from me. We can see each other all the time. It is an ultimate form of non-staring. And yet I could describe it in such a way to ordinary people that would, on the surface, almost sound like he's staring. That is, that I have a way in which I'm going to behave and nothing will deter me from the course. I cannot be swayed. This is what I'm going to do, and that's it. But to do that, you've got to be able to do it and not stare. You have to be able to willfully pursue a certain form of behavior, and it takes into account, not at all, how the other person, and as all of you should know by now, what you call your personal problems always ends up with a binary dance. It's you and somebody else, you and your mother, and then later that afternoon it's you and your boyfriend, or you and your husband, you and your kid, you and your boss. Is you simply take into account, not at all, how the other person is reacting to it, if at all. The basis of it I already described in the beginning. The apparent problem is always this: when you believe that you know better, and assuming you do know better, through this kind of strange activity, that now I am going to quit dancing in this mechanical, unprofitable, unpleasant way with my mother, with my blank, whoever. And no matter how I try, they won't do it. And life is wired up so as to make you then stop. That the problem is insurmountable. I am ready to change. I am ready to behave differently, and the rest of the problem will not. Therefore, I've still got the problem. You're still an idiot. You're still living in the city. And if you suspect, well, things are not changing, you're right. And if you suspect or if you fear that things will never change, you're doubly right. They never will. If I allowed it, you can continue to come here and listen to me from now on. But until you begin to understand this, until you understand that there is no waiting for anybody else to change their dance step. There is no waiting for your mother to suddenly say one day, right in the middle of some tirade, to go, my God, I just heard myself. In the last few months especially, you've been so sweet and so decent, and you hadn't argued back, and suddenly it was like a movie. It was like a moment of epiphany, and you hear maybe an organ music swell up and the lights, and your mother says, I see the light, I realize I shouldn't pick on you. You're 52 years old. Do whatever you want to. And for you to fall on your knees and say, oh, thank you, Mother. Now, how about the internal dance between you and the partner? Maybe that's too sticky for tonight. Let's go back to the apparent external. Every relationship you've got, you can change. You can even do it when your parents' financial welfare is involved. I remind all you people one more time, do not start playing around when you don't know what you're doing. And nothing you ever do that you pick up here from me or you suspect that you want to go try, if it hurts you in some way, if it has the potential to harm you, like financially, like with your job, is don't do it. If you got any fear, because that means you don't know what you're doing. But what I was going to say is, when it seems to be a real locked-in dance, like you and people you work for, managers, and you believe, well, I cannot change. I cannot change the situation because they're not going to change. You can still set up your own agenda as to what you will think and what you will feel and what you will actually respond to from them, and you can live by it. This is the very thing that none of you, I don't catch the aroma of any of you particularly putting this together. This is the very thing that I threw in there in the beginning off to the side that people believe would be the payoff, that they feel as the attraction to morality. All forms of standards of behavior. That's why I was saying about religious ideas, all the way from that to the service. If the Marines wanted you, son, to have a wife, they'd given you a wife. If they wanted you to have problems, they would have given you problems. If they wanted you to have ballet shoes, they'd have given you shoes. Whatever you've got, son, look. The Marine Corps gave it to you. Look yourself up and down, look in your foot locker. If whatever it is you think you want, if it's not in there and we didn't give it to you, forget it. And there are many people, and they feel like, God bless me, I found my place. The allure of religion, or so-called philosophies even, people that claim, well, I've fallen in love with my interpretation of the some Greek thinker, the Stoics, that some writer listed out these particular forms of behavior, the do's and don'ts of what you should do. And you find people back in college, some of you might have gone through this. And for 2 or 3 months, they're suddenly, I'm a New Age Stoic. And there's certain things I'll do and I won't do. And it has a good feel to it for people. And people wish, God, I wish I could be a real Catholic. I wish I could be a real whatever and live. I sit down and I read the Ten Commandments, or I read the standards of our church, our dogma. And it brings tears to my eyes. I get off alone and I think, God, why am I wasting my life like this? I should go ahead and be a good blank. The lure is to have an agenda. If I could adopt this, especially since it came from the gods, but if I could just adopt this, all of my behavior would be regimented. There would be no surprises. I would be a good Marine. It's right here in the book, no matter what happens. If a superior officer insults you, it tells you exactly what to do. If an inferior insults you, it tells you what to do. If somebody off base insults you, it tells you how to dress. It tells you how to dress every day of the week, special occasions. It tells you who to salute, who to bow to, whose ring to kiss. It tells you who you might raise your eyebrow and return to some hostility, and who you should hang your head down to. Who to submit to, who you might be able to dominate. That is the allure. It's not described, of course, the way in which I'm describing, but the lure is, if I had a secret agenda, if I had something to live by, to where my attitude was, fuck whatever else happens, then I'd be something. The allure is built in out there in the mechanical world, out in the city, but as I've noted, most people, to say the very least, cannot do it. Obviously you people can, or you wouldn't be here. You'd be back in church. You'd be back with the Kiwanis or back in the Marine Corps. You'd be a lifer. The other people can't do it either. You should observe that. But that is the allure of it. But once you understand anything, you've got no excuse for not having your own dance card. Once you begin to understand anything, you are a pitiful sight. Pitiful, really. To understand something, and then to turn back around to me or to yourself, but it normally comes out to me, and to whine about, well, I try so hard and so won't dance right. This has been a problem, and I thought I was beginning to get a handle on it from listening to you talk about how to handle my mother, father, first 3 wives, whatever, my husband. And yet I just can't do it. I can't seem to find the place to really move the situation. You'll never find it. A real revolutionist has their own agenda. And that's it. There are things, of course here again is one of the sticky places of why this is not a popular activity, because when it's done at this level there is no real rules and regulations. Now, I could give them out, but then that would be self-defeating. There is no real rules and regulations to get from me or from any source to tell you exactly what to do. I hint. I play around the edges. Like I give outlines in general, cutting out, or trying to get you to help me cut out sort of rough silhouettes about this might be the general area in which you might operate. But you've got to find for yourself that once you begin to see, my mother is not going to change. Nobody's going to change. Nobody. And you see that, then you are a pitiful sight to then whine about it. What in the hell are you whining about? That you can tell yourself, or try and tell me, all right, even after the short time I've been exposed to this, I see this. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind, you tell me, or yourself. People in general cannot change, comma. And I feel a lot better for having seen this, comma. But damn, my mother or somebody is driving me nuts. You can't have it all. You can't see something and then tell me that you got a problem. You cannot see that things are as they are. And it's other people in the city that say you are what you eat, or people in the city that say you are what you think. The revolutionist says you are what you are. And then some. If you've got your own agenda, if you've got your own dance card, and there are things you will not do, I feel as though I should describe it a little more in detail for some of you. This has nothing to do, as you should know by now, I've tried to let you know, subtly and otherwise, has nothing to do with any form of morality known. It's certainly got anything to do with any sort of religion. But once you understand something outside the 3D limits of the city, then there are things that you will not do. That's not the word for it. There are things you cannot do. And that's not the word for it. There's no word for it. And when I start talking about this, it sounds like, well, it's some form of morality. It's an internal agenda. It's based on understanding the limits and the requirements of life as it is. But so here's the way it is. Once you understand certain things, then inalterably, inescapably, immediately changes your behavior. And that's the end of it. For instance, if you truly understand my mother is there dancing, no excuses, no anything about, well, how old she is and she's sick, forget all that. It's your mother and everybody else's mother. Everybody else's father, everybody else's uncle. Everybody else is wired to the dance they're doing. When you see that, there is no longer any complaint possible toward your mother. None. Not now, not in your memory, not in the future. That's the end of it. There is nothing that she can apparently do to make you mad. There's nothing she can do to conjure the problem back up. Unless, of course, you fall back to that old ordinary line level version of consciousness. But you've got to face up to it. That the problem is not my mother. The problem is I fell back down. The problem is I went back home to the city. The problem is I became me again. My mother didn't do anything to me. My husband, my wife, nobody did anything to me. They're doing the dance that they do. I can go in another room, they continue to do it. It takes them 20 minutes to even notice I'm gone. I can holler, yeah, Ma. They keep doing it. I can call her up on the phone, and I can see her doing it. I can refuse to call her for 3 months, and I can hear her. 1,500 miles away, I can hear that dance going on. I can hear it in my head. I know what she's going to say. To understand that, to see that, there's then behavior, there are things that you can no longer do. You have your own personal agenda. You have a sense of 4D morality. I'd never called it that, but I'm just trying to get you to look in the right direction. There are things that you can never do again, and one of them is to be mad at your mother for doing what she does. To stay with that example. And it's no longer any question, it's no longer any even small problem about, well, boy, we could have a good time now that I'm older, a little wiser, if she'd just ease up. If she just realized that I'm no longer the firebrand that I used to be, that I'm no longer complaining about the ways I imagine she mistreated me, why can't she reciprocate? Why can't she see this? To have your own agenda makes everything else, and every other dance in the world, it makes the rest of it moot. It's of no consequence. It does not enter into your agenda. It does not enter into your behavior. And it is not something, if I must point this out, it is not something that is plotted intellectually. When I said your agenda, you do not sit down and decide, well, here's the things that I will say and not say to my mother. See, number one, it's not simply your mother. I assume you understand. I just stand with the example that I picked out. It is that you don't complain with anybody. You don't argue with anybody. You don't whine with anybody. If whatever, I've now got to step in and isolate reality and chop it up into artificial pieces without going into why and how it started. But here it is. It's time for you to go visit your mother. You feel the need to go visit your mother. Whatever brings it on, you go visit your mother. You walk in the door and you have your agenda. You have not, yellow circuit-wise, plotted it. It is not written out. There are simply things that you can no longer do and things you will do. And that's it. In the face of your mother. It'd be in the face of your God. Those of you that believe that kind of crap. That there are things I will do and nothing's going to change that. And it's not a decision you make. You don't ever tell yourself that. I'm the one telling you that. You got no business ever saying anything like this to yourself. That's like a first story. That's like really whistling in the dark. It is simply that once you see this, to stay with this example again, there is no problem between you and your mother. You go see her. She goes ahead with whatever dance it is, whatever she has to say. And in a sense, you don't listen. Now you do know I do not mean in some fictional movie situation comedy manner of trying not to listen. It's you will not dance. There are only certain steps you will do in life. And your mother, or anybody, your mother getting you to argue with her, your mother getting you to defend yourself, is not one of the steps. You will not do that step. That's not the word. You cannot do that step. That's not the word. I suggest to you, those of you that like the old mythical stories and religious stories, all the way from Socrates to Jesus and 1,000 others you probably never heard of, all these old stories are bringing up this guy. They apparently are stories that happened out here in life. And they say, is it true that you believe so-and-so? Is it true that you said so-and-so? Is it true that you failed to do such and such that all the other citizens do? And the real stories, the good ones, the better ones, I suggest to you, if you understand them, is the guy that just stands there. Now, there are reasons I can make use of, and I could use them as examples of Socrates, of him with that long apology of his, that explanation. They call it an apology, which in essence told the Senate, you know. Well, no, I don't mean it that crude, those of you who read it. He actually told them what the dance was. And he got then, he said, now I know I'm wasting my time, so... But the good stories, I suggest to you, are more in line with what I've told you, that a real revolutionist never tells himself what he's doing. And so when Poncho Pilate called Jesus, and he said, is it true that you are so-and-so? Or what it was he asked him, is it true that you said so-and-so? And he said, just, say yes or no. It doesn't matter. We'll get this over with. I got to go somewhere. We've got an orgy going on. Just say something. And the guy just stands there. He said, well, you'll nod your head or something. Just admit, you say yes or no. And if you say yes and you're supposed to be guilty, I'll find you, 2 geese and a Dracula or something. And the guy won't say anything. And don't get hung up on me using Jesus. That's just one version of those many stories. That's just one I figured most of you had heard about. The guy won't say anything. Now take it internally. That there are things that you will and you will not do. And the partnership tells you, hey, are you going to put up with this shit with somebody? Can they talk to us that way? Now once you begin to answer back, some of you should already be able to feel this. It's irrational, it's insane from the city view, but once you begin to answer back, they got you. You should never confess. Don't worry about out here. That's bad enough. But real bad is in here. Don't let the voices, don't let their own partnership say, well, hey, your mother, look, that's gone far enough. Say something. Stop this. It might as well be this tyrannical, insane priest, judge, the whole Athens Senate, worse yet, your own partnership. Somebody's saying, all right, just speak up. Just, are we going to put up with this or not? Just say yes or no, so we got something to go on. That's the trick. Something to go on. It's saying, take one step here. Now, we don't have to dance long. We just dance with me here just one time, enough that we can talk. Be reasonable. How can I turn you loose if you won't at least say yes or no? You've got to say, I'm innocent or I'm guilty. It doesn't matter. Soto voice, he says, it doesn't matter. Just admit one or the other so we can get on with this. A real revolutionist won't admit shit. There's nothing to admit. That's some of the behavior that he will not engage in. And every time that you go ahead and dance with somebody, you've made an admission. You've admitted you're as weak as they are. You've admitted that you're in the same dance as they are. You've admitted that you're in the same cabaret, you're hearing the same music, and you're saying, I don't like it. And you're whining, you're bitching, you're slobbering on yourself and wanting somebody to take pity. Them, yourself, then maybe find somebody like me, a psychiatrist, your mother, if it wasn't her doing this to you, as somebody to take pity on me. How about back to the stories? All these great mythical heroes, they always go to their death and they never whine. those that won't say anything. Does that tell you anything? And forget, by now you should know we're not talking about stories. I'm not suggesting to you that they actually happen. That's irrelevant. But those that refuse to say yea or nay, those in these great myths that somebody says you have got to be judged, you have done something out of the ordinary. You've done something that goes against the grain of the city morals, the city standards, the city beliefs. That's what you've been accused of. Is that true? The real stories of those guys that go there at death, and for some reason these great things spring out about how heroic they were because they never whined. That's because they didn't whine the first time. If you whine the first time, like say, all right, not guilty, then you're going to whine. Once you get it started, once you make any admission, they can drag anything out of you. And by they, you know I'm not talking about the Athens Synod, I'm not talking about anybody out there, I'm talking about life. Putting you into the carrot juicer, and it'll get out the last drop. All this guy do is say, well, hey, just stick your little finger in here. Just stick your hip right here against the edge. Once you go forward a little bit, you're done for. I guess that's what the alcoholics talk about, that they can't, boy, I can't, if I have a drop, I'm finished. Justice. That is what it is if you ever have a sense of having an agenda and you ever abandon it for a second. Now, I'm not trying to make that sound like some irreversible faux pas you've made, because everybody does it. You'll go through that, but I'm telling you, you should not. You should not look at it as being a common thing that, all right, I just feel already. I feel that I should not be arguing with this person. I feel that I should not even be, that I shouldn't respond to what's going on, but Jesus. And there you go. Or you say, wait just a minute. And you put your little finger in it. You've responded to the court. You've responded to your accusers. You've responded to the dance partner. And once you respond a little bit, you've got to respond more. Same thing internally. As always, you just never gotten this from ordinary sources, but once you begin to see the topography of life in a four-dimensional way, at the very least, you'll see that life does this. This is the way life operates. Except it is not done through the consciousness of people. Life has its own agenda. And you are dancing backwards. You might as well be the Italian people en masse. That the man comes out and says, I want to dance and I'm going to lead, and everybody goes, have mercy. Here I am, take me. That's what life does. You got no particular choice in that matter. You are being fattened. You're being fed. You're transferring energy. And life has its own private agenda. But then it talks to man in his consciousness, through his genes, about the matter of free will. But it has its own agenda, and life will not change to suit you. Life will not change to suit a whole bunch of yous put together. Life will not change to suit a whole bunch. Like nations, philosophies, religions. A whole bunch of angry people. Get up a whole bunch of angry people and have it as the main thing you're angry about is having to die. Go ahead and see what you can do about it. Of course, you got to go to the source. That you're just tired of being pushed around. Of course, ordinary people, then they start looking, well, I'm tired of being pushed around by the capitalists, by the bankers, by the government. They'll look everywhere, just like a kid will, faced with a bully. They're going to try to pick on the bully's younger brother. Nobody wants to pick on the bully. So everybody says, well, we've got enemies, we've got people oppressing us, and it's them. It's always down at city level, notice. It's always a horizontal point. It's the fascists, the communists, the Arabs. If you saw that life had its own agenda, that life had its own dance card, and everybody on this planet except, and this is not literally true, but few little people seem to have a little amount of room to fool around on the dance floor before their time is over. But you look out and you see that by and large, generally speaking, for all intents and purposes, as they say in the city, every fucking person on this planet is dancing backwards and loving every minute of it as if they had a choice. There's your lesson. Life does not discuss it with you. Life does not answer questions. Life does not apologize. You can run in the yard all you want to and scream up at the heavens. I mean, your forefathers, and everybody believed that's where it was, is why I look up. You know, damn you! Do all you want to. Answer me! What's going on here? How can you kill me after all the good stuff I've done? All the good stuff I could do later on. How can you do this to me? How could you do this to my poor mother, my children that died so young? Try it. Life is not going to give you the time of day. Or even better yet, or worse yet, try these bargains. All right, answer me. If you answer me, then I'll lighten up on you. I won't be so mad if you just answer me one question. And if you listen way off into space, if you got these kind of ears, you can almost hear a faint. But you better have hoped, or we all better hope that you brought a big brown paper sack full of sandwiches if you're going to wait around for life to respond. Just your one question for you to say, as they would say, these mythical heroes, just answer us one question, and we'll get this over with. You can hold out to life. Just tell me one thing. Tell me why you killed my youngest daughter at the age of 6 months. Just tell me that, and then I'll quit bad-mouthing you. Just tell me that. Just tell me that, and if you maybe you understand, you must know what you're doing, so just tell me that, and then I'll ease up. I'll quit talking about you like a dog. Hold your breath. Better yet, you people, learn a lesson. The big guys have their own agenda, and they don't whine. And they do not wait for someone else to change their dance step because they know they are not going to. Case is closed. So what's left? And what's left is quite simply that you've got your own agenda. There are things that you do and there are things that you will not do, and that's the end of it. And once you see that and once you can do that, then what you call the problems with anybody is... And it's not that your mother's changed. A real aside, but I should point out, it is not also that such a change in you will not have any effect on other people. For those of you that believe that that has got to be true somewhere, it's not that there is nothing, that there is no validity to that. But I'm just saying you can't operate on that basis. That's not the point. And they're not going to change in such a degree that you can lay off of your own agenda and suddenly everything's all right. So it's not that it will not affect other people. I'm not saying that, but that's not the point. And you don't operate on that basis. That is sort of an irrelevant side effect. The relevant, the pertinent, direct effect is that there is nothing to say about whatever the dance was that you didn't like once you have your own agenda. Then you go in to visit your mother, whoever it is, and there are things that you do and that you will not do, and that's the end of it. And you will not take the voice saying, well, now that may sound all right on some kind of theoretical basis, but this is my mother. If you had a good memory, you would know that if it wasn't your mother, it would be somebody else. Because then all we got to do is go from the problem of your mother to the problem of your wife. And then I could say this, and you go, well, that may sound all right, but this is my wife. The answer is, well, it's always somebody, isn't it? It is, in a sense, so simplistic to talk about that in many instances I take such as this and I roll it up into all sorts of layers and I'll talk about it for months because it is so simplistic. And notice in yourself, don't take what I'm about to say now as something theoretical or some pseudo-psychological commentary on the nature of man. Just look into yourself, your own kind of hardwired reactions, as you can hear it and go, well, hey, you know, that's true, and he elicited some laughs and almost made me see that I should be stronger and stand up to my mother and not let her push me around. But, you know, what he's describing, you know, nobody does that. And you're wrong. There's not but a handful of people on the planet at any given time doing it. But you are wrong to say that nobody does it. And you're wrong to even continue to come here if you don't believe that somebody does it, and if you don't want to do it. And if you do not sense, not in some reasonable fashion, not in some way you can prove, but if you do not sense that I am correct in telling you this, that that is the way you should do it. It is not disrespectful to your mother, to the gods, to the universe. It's nothing to them. It's nothing. They're blinded by the dance. They're blinded just the way that you normally are. They're staring straight ahead. But you are wasting my time. You're wasting your time. You're trying to compound an idiot. That is you, not me. I'll take care of myself. You're trying to simply compound yourself if you do not sense that already. And that when it gets down to behavior-wise, it is that simple. But the simplicity can, speaking at the yellow circuit level, of you just hearing me describe it this way, is what I keep giving you the caveat about, is you can just go, well, yeah. It's so simple, yeah. But then the basis is you leave was, I can't do it. The stopping of the tape was an opportune place for me to change the subject after spending one whole side of the tape on this, but I'm not going to. I want to be sure that everyone has every opportunity in the world to hear me very correctly. Your own agenda has first got to be either based on some understanding you've got of things are as they are and that people are not going to change, period. Or you have got to, in some way, begin to rely on the feeling you get of things I say even before you understand it. I don't require that, and I've told you that that is not necessary to participate in this. But I've never told you not to either. Think about that for a second. Your agenda would be that I will not do that which is harmful to me, and you can't plot it, you can't describe it, makes no sense. You're wasting your time to try and sit down and to draw it out, to diagram it out, but you refuse to dance. And you can do this, and people do not notice it in a way that will affect the general dance in their scheme of things. Under certain conditions, you could point it out once. It is not the same thing as whining. It's not the same thing as telling yourself what you're doing. It's not the same thing as responding to your critics. But let us say that your mother loves to gossip. And as soon as you sit down, she says, oh, do you remember your second cousin, Gladys? And she begins to tell you about she's run off with an insurance salesman from Peoria. And you say, no. You can try to non-verbally tell her no. You can get them leave the room. You can refuse to dance. And one time you could tell somebody. This is appropriate, especially with somebody as close as your own family. You could say, don't tell me any gossip about people, okay? Don't do that. I'm not going to listen to it. I'm not going to participate in it. and get up and go get a glass of water or something, give them a chance to sort of do their stuff without being all embarrassed. And they find themselves in mid-step and you kind of pulled out from them. And then never put up with it again. And it is not any dance, to stay with this example, it is not a dance with your mother. You do not, the next time she does, you don't say, now listen, I don't want to hear that. If you hear what I'm saying, you might tell the person one time, but never again. Never, never again. They'll remember it. They'll finally remember it. The next time they start it, you get up and walk out of the room. Or you change the subject, verbally. You might go, hey, whatever happened to so-and-so? Or, hey, I like your new clock. Isn't that a new TV you guys got? Boy, your hair looks good. They will finally remember, if you keep it up, the one time you told them. Don't ever tell them twice. Anybody. Don't even tell yourself once. We're going back to how to practically use this, for those of you that may still believe that it sounds a little bit too exotic. One thing, any of you that hear enough of this, that it does begin to strike you that this is proper, that you might look at as being a kind of help, is you cannot stare at what you're doing internally when you do it. That is, do not be thinking of what you're doing. That is, oh boy, I'm putting up a good fight. I sure would like to hear the gospel about Aunt Gladys, but boy, I'm not. Boy, I'm proud of me. You're playing the hero and Pancho Pilate. You're doing it simultaneously. You're hollering, boy, am I brave to be able to put up with these blows, and it might aim good. Boy, I'm proud of me. You're playing the hero and Pancho Pilate. You're doing it simultaneously. You're hollering, boy, am I brave to be able to put up with these blows, and it might aim good. If you get to the point of having your own agenda to live by, your own dance card to go by, then nobody else has a problem. There may be people, I am going to go ahead and change the subject. There may be people that you would no longer associate with. It might include your mother. But it would have nothing to do with an argument. And you would not be hanging around talking to your mother in here. If so, going back. It's the same thing. It would no longer be any sort of argument. It would not be you entertaining your own voices about, well, I haven't seen her now. What has it been? 3 years? And your voice says, nearly 3.5. You think, well, I hope she learned her lesson. Imagine how she's suffering. But she wouldn't listen to me. I told her to quit bitching and always gave my back. It's really been 3.5. Yep, almost. You're wasting your time. Well, you're back in the city. You're not wasting your time because everybody in the city wastes their time. But you're back at the same old post. You're back in the same old dance. You just feel like, well, I'm not there personally in her presence, and so we're not dancing. Shows what you know. You don't have to be there to dance. What do you think God gave you memory for? You're always dancing. Dancing with somebody. Dancing with people that died. Still dancing. It is simply the way that you operate. It's not a psychological trick. It's not something that affects other people directly. It is not something intended to affect them directly. It is based upon the understanding, the nonverbal understanding, that life is wired up so that everyone has the inclination to dance at a moment's notice. That everybody from my mother to strangers can say, could we have this step? The stranger goes by in a car and hollers, fuck you, fatso, and you danced. They were doing at least 70 when they passed you. They're now almost out of sight, and you're dancing. You son of a goddamn bitch, you come back here and you'll find out who's fatso. 3 hours later, you're staying at a bar having a beer. That son of a bitch. Has anybody seen, there's a green pickup truck? If any of you around here drives a green pickup truck, he got a beard. God, if I could find that son of a bitch. If you understood that things are as they are, then everything that you call a problem with other people, you would simply understand that I could either going to dance by my card. I repeat one more time, this is nonverbal. You're never going to sit down and go through this. I have to stand here and make up this for you to put words on it. It's a kind of encouragement, it's a kind of preconditioning to the kind of resistance that life puts up to this. It's part of what I do for you. So you're never going to sit down. Don't wait for someday that you believe you're going to sit down or some voice is going to come out of the heavens and say what I'm saying to you, because once you understand it, all this is irrelevant. It's moot itself. But the understanding is that there is nothing to be done except what I do. And that's it. Whether it's my mother, whether it's a stranger going by in a green pickup truck hurling insults at me. There's nothing to be done unless I go by my dance card. If I do not have an agenda, nothing is going to change. And nothing is going to change in the dance as far as I'm concerned except my step. Nobody else is going to change. And that the whole world is wired up to dance at the drop of a hat. That everybody is inclined to dance with anybody who invites them to dance. And then everybody is likewise wired up to believe that no situation, no dance can change until the other partner changes. At the ordinary level, that's just reasonable. It's not open to an attack. It's just me here under these isolated conditions. They can make it sound as though something is fishy there. Because everybody in the city, everybody with ordinary walking around consciousness knows that if a situation, well, what you're calling a dance, a situation between two people, if it's going to change, they both got to change. My God, everybody can see that. Silly old me. That is the ordinary level of consciousness. That if both people don't change to some degree now, perhaps one of the parties may be more at fault than the other. And so one person may have to change 80%, another person 20%, but by God, all change is in some way between people, in some relationship. It's got to be mutual. They have both got to participate. They both got to change. It's just reasonable, right? Of course, my only question then, if they could hear it, is, well, if that's true, let me ask you this. Why is it that nothing ever changes in the city? Does that strike you as curious at all? Not me. Why is it people spend thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars in religions and cults, psychiatrists, counselors, read books, magazine articles, and nothing happens? Well, that's because both parties won't change. Oh, I see. There I go again. I guess I will apparently change the subject. You recall some couple of weeks back I pointed out, at least in part, another aspect of what you should find is a kind of interesting topological reality in life, that no matter what seemed to be the area, when humans began to operate in that area, they can either operate on the basis of providing goods or services, and that you couldn't seem to stretch it any further than that. that anything you could think of would fall into one of those categories. If you had unlimited time, unlimited resources, unlimited finances, whatever area you picked out, you're still limited to that. That, all right, we're going to undertake this enterprise, and we can do anything we want to. And no matter how drunk you get, how stoned you get, how silly you get, and you and your partners discuss all the possibilities, it always comes down to this. No matter what the field was, no matter what the enterprise, no matter what the endeavor was, you're always limited to this. All right, we either got to provide goods along these lines, that is, sell people stuff, or make them pay for our services related thereto. And you mean we drank up 14 cases of champagne, smoked all that pot, had all those laughs, drank all that coffee, talked about all those crazy ideas we had that we sat up all night laughing, and we're still back to this? We either got to sell them this stuff or make them pay for the related services. You remember that, don't you? And then just as I split, I also ask you if you could see some connection between that and the connection between nouns and verbs. That brings everybody up to date. So here is another of humanity's singularities, and that is that only man can make a verb. Life produces the goods, and man provides the services. Life produces the nouns, humanity provides the verbs. It is another aspect, if you can see this, between life's old 1-2 punch. It has given rise into man's genetic code, now into the yellow circuits, this somewhat vague but continuing, shall we call it a belief? Why not? All right? And something like free will, that a lot of people should be responsible for their actions. Well, not me, because you don't know the pressure I've been under, but like this other person. That guy had no business going by and shouting out an insult at me. Now, he had his own free will. He could have gone past me. I was not bothering him. He had no call to do that. So it was just his own volition. He exercised his own free will to hurl that insult at me. Yeah, but you got mad. Well, Jesus, wouldn't you get mad? I mean, somebody unprovoked to go by and to curse you. Would you get mad or not? Now, I was within my rights. I try to keep my temper down. I'll admit that. I'm prone to get mad. But you know, I was uncalled for. You know, any human would have done that. So you got this general fog over the city that free will somewhere enters into this kind of stuff, especially with other people. Especially with other people. They should have known better and all that. But another example of life's old 1-2 punches, it gives out that general feeling, debatable as it seems to be at times, that man has this free will. But then look what life does. It has made humanity, to turn it into a tactile example, it now makes humanity go around and pick up all the elements and turn them into automobiles. I go back to the opening of this paragraph. Life produces the goods and man provides the services. Life has laid out the goods. Got iron ore over here, some chrome. Over there, some polyester, some vinyl, some rubber. It's just laying around. The goods are there. And you've got your free will. You can do whatever you want to, right? But nobody notices that life now has everybody, I say now, always, has everybody in an unrecognized state of captivity that you got to go around and pick up the chrome, the rubber, the fibers to make floor mats, the plastic to make little radios. That you got to go pick all this stuff up, and you got to turn it into a goddamned automobile, whether you want to or not. And while all the time believing that you're dancing with the foreman, with your mother, your father, with life, that you're going somewhere because the assembly line has the impression of movement. And as Einstein so aptly proved, at least to my satisfaction, you can look at the assembly line and by God believe that it's you moving. Only men with the 3D observable level can make a verb. I figured after the easy opening that I spent this first 40 or 50 minutes on, I could get into something a little more exotic to end up the tape. That's why I decided to slip this in on you tonight, because you do know, as always, asked he, rhetorically, that I am not talking about chrome and rubber and automobiles and assembly lines, don't you? Well, yeah, but I'm not sure what you are talking about. Brave up, young lad. Stiff upper lip. The goods, the nouns, the things were here when you got here. Am I right? You were born and all the stuff was here. The goods, your mother, your father, the hospital, the doctor, the car that carried you home, the bed you laid in. Everything that had a name, everything that was a noun was here. It was here when you were born in 1956, 1938. It was here times zero, to use the old Judaic story. Suddenly, from wherever he came from, which was like a movie, like everything else, you just turn it on and it starts. Here's Adam! And Adam looked around, and the first thing he went was, wow, what a bunch of shit! Well, that was slang talk, and not shit, not derogatory, but, you know, what a bunch of stuff! It was all here. He didn't have to go look for it. He didn't have to bring it with him. There he was, naked. He didn't have any chrome in his pocket, no tires, no mag wheels, no steering wheels. He got here, and it was here. It just wasn't put together yet. But that was surely the first thing. If Adam was my kind of Adam, he looked around, he thought, geez, it's all here. It's a good thing, you know, it's a good thing since I arrived here naked, no baggage. It was all here. The nouns are always here. From one view, what is man's purpose? What is man's job here? He's got to go around and pick up all this stuff. You know, more or less. Sometimes he has to put forth a little more effort. It's like dig it out of the ground, mix it with a whole bunch of other stuff, build factories to get the combination just right. But he has to take all the nouns and he has to turn them through his being able to create verbs, that is services, turn them into something else. That he took all of this elemental stuff that was laying here. And he had, through the sweat of his own brow, I think as they used to call it, turn all this stuff into something else. Now reminding you that I did not bring this up to speak about automobiles, nor Adam, nor chrome, nor mag wheels. What is it that humanity is doing here and no one recognizes it? Well, I told you when I started this paragraph. Only man, regardless of Joyce Kramer or whatever his name was, forget trees, only man can make a verb. There's the 3D level. Life does not make verbs. What is your responsibility? I keep hearing philosophers and people in college, as long as we've had history, hollering, what's the meaning of us being here? I'm trying to kind of push you over that way. It's to turn nouns through verbs, through man being able to create the verbs, to turn nouns into other nouns. and stuff won't change by itself. You know that. Now even you know that. You can go over. See, I knew some of you knew that or suspected. You can go over it if there is an open chrome mine where you can get to. You can stand there and you can look. You can say, naughty chrome, you'll do better. You can read out a proclamation. Attention, all chrome. You can do anything you want to that is standing there, and it is not going to turn into a bumper. Now you knew that. But there it is, a potential, this chrome mine is a potential bumper. What is man's responsibility? You look around, who else can make verbs? Who else can provide services here? Nobody. You're it. You are the assembly line. There is no union. You can't quit. There's nowhere to complain to. Well, you try, but what good does it do? And yet, look at this peculiar part. As it is your job not to provide nouns, not to provide goods, the goods are here. They were here when you got here. They'll be here for the next generation. The goods are here. Your job is to change the goods into more goods. And they cannot change themselves. Goods cannot change themselves. Nouns cannot change themselves. There has to be a verb between two nouns to get it from one place to another. To change some goods into more goods, there has to be action between them. There has to be verbiage between the nouns. There has to be services between the goods. Can you feel any of that internally? What is it that the yellow circuits are about? What is it that human conversation is about? What is it that daydreaming is about? What is it that memory is all about? What is it that telling people plans, what you're going to do, telling yourself what you're going to do? What is that? For the last 50 or 60 years, all the physicists, they all just love it. They keep repeating it like they just discovered again yesterday that, well, it's becoming more and more obvious. There's less and less doubt that man cannot produce matter. Matter is neither created nor destroyed. Neither every other week or every 5 minutes some new physicist discovers this, or he reads it and says, I've been thinking about this now for 40 years and I'm convinced, by God, it's true. Whew. Give me a break. The nouns are here. They're calling it matter. The goods are here. And man cannot produce goods. Man's in charge of services. Man is in charge of verbs. Let the rest of them holler out, what's the meaning of life? Why am I here? I just told you. Provide the services. You ain't got the goods. The goods are here. The little quirky part that I was going to point out several minutes ago, in case you think I forgot, plus I'm sure all of you have already forgotten, I said I was about to, is then, what is it that man keeps dreaming, that men in general dream as being the payoff for their labor? It's not for services. They don't want services. They dream that what I want is some goods out of this. Money, cars, whatever. If anybody knew what they were doing, though, they already had their hands on the goods. But you slave for somebody else. Well, you watch it, I'm going to have to talk real quick back and forth, and I'm talking about cars, I'm talking about something else. Why go through the middleman? Why have they got you on the assembly line that you had to turn the chrome into bumpers, and you had to turn the iron ore into the frames and the running gears and the transmission? There you had it, and you're putting it together. Why go ahead and put it together for the factory, and then get through, and then have to go in debt and go buy the thing that you just built? You do understand, don't you, that I'm not talking about cars. What's going on internally? You have built cars all your life. You have built paradise. You have danced with yourself. You've danced with the dream of everything that you should do. You've danced with the dream of everything that you should not be doing. And you keep building cars for somebody. And they keep going out the other end of the building, and then you keep worrying about, how could I save my money and buy one of those jewels? And nobody can seem to get to you. It's not their job. And they slap you around and say, well, you dumb motherfucker, you built it. And for somebody to finally look and go, that's a fact. And I'm in here, I'm working 2 jobs, or I'm working 2 shifts to buy one of those things, and that's what I do all day. You're right. I thought I'd recognize that thing somewhere. And it's somebody driving every night. They get out from work, and they drive past this showroom. They look at this red sports car, and they think, God, if I could get the down payment, if I get somebody to finance it, if I could buy that, this is what life's about. This is the American way. This is why I work. And for somebody to point out, that's what you do all day is build that. You're building the car every day. You're providing the service, and then believing the payoff should be in some kind of goods, but you're providing the services that made the goods. Now forget the car. Life. Every time you bitch, every time you whine, every time you say that somebody else is wrong, every time you believe I need some kind of surcease from my problems, I need some kind of cure for my problems, you're doing the same thing. You have had the chrome, you've had the rubber, you've had the iron ore, you've had the aluminum, you've had it all in your grubby little hands all your life. It is running through you. You are the assembly line. I lied to you. I said I'd change the subject. Now look at the assembly line as a dance. This factory, life, making you turn all the raw elements, making you turn all the goods into more complicated, more sophisticated goods through your services, that is somebody else's agenda. What if you had your own agenda? I suspect that tonight was hoary enough for everybody that I could almost stop. I still had an excursion left from Tuesday, but I didn't get around to telling you or setting up the basis for the excursion, did I? No. But be that as it may. Ciao.